What are the archetypes? Unlocking the hidden blueprint of your mind, depth mind, deep within the mind, where light and darkness intertwine. Archetypes silently shape how we love, struggle, and dream. Carl Jung revealed that the true journey of life is not to deny the darkness, but to illuminate it through consciousness. In this video, we embark on a journey into the invisible map of the soul, where primordial patterns flow beneath our awareness. Exploring archetypes not only unlocks deeper self-awareness, but also awakens our inner strength, freedom, and true meaning of life. Don't just live on the surface. Let's listen to the silent call from within. The human mind, a blank slate, or the invisible map of the soul. Since ancient times, the question regarding the nature of the human mind has haunted the greatest thinkers of humanity. When a child is born, is its mind a blank slate, empty, and awaiting the first experiences to shape its form? Or does there already exist an invisible map, pre-formed structures that dictate how it perceives the world from the very first moment? Carl Gustav Jung, the great analytical psychologist of the 20th century, rejected the blank slate hypothesis. According to him, human beings do not come into this world empty-handed. We carry within us primordial psychological structures, ancient patterns that Jung called archetypes. These are not merely accumulations of personal experience, but a profound heritage preserved through thousands of generations, buried deep within the collective unconscious. Jung was not alone in this viewpoint. Mythologists, philosophers, and spiritual scholars from ancient times to the modern era have all intuitively sensed the existence of primordial forms that govern human thought and action. Transcending the individual, Jung differed from them in that he did not stop at intuition or belief. He sought to systematize research and analyze archetypes as psychological realities observable through their manifestations in dreams, religion, and mythology. So if our minds are not blank, but already shaped before conscious experience, what does that mean for each individual's life? It means we are not merely products of circumstances deep within us. There are ancient undercurrents shaping the way we love, struggle, hope, and despair. These currents are both sources of strength and profound challenges, for if we remain unaware of them, we live like the blind, led by inner forces we ourselves do not understand. Conversely, if we dare to journey into that invisible map, if we have the courage to look directly at the patterns shaping us, the journey of healing and inner awakening begins. Jung believed that the ultimate goal of life is not to avoid suffering or to seek external success, but to expand the light of consciousness into the darkest corners of the self. In the modern world, where the ego is worshipped and insecurity is masked by layers of achievement, returning to explore our unconscious map is not merely a philosophical choice. It is a necessity for survival. For if we do not understand which patterns govern us, if we do not know who is truly living our life from within, then all freedom is mere illusion, and all success just a mask concealing a fractured soul. When we ask, "Who am I?" the answer does not come from social labels or outward roles. It echoes from the depths, from the invisible map left by our ancestors, still waiting to be read, understood, and awakened. That is where the true journey begins. Archetypes, Jung's journey to decipher the deepest legacy of the mind. When Jung began studying dreams, mythology, and religion, he was not merely searching for random coincidences. He found vivid evidence of a deeper truth. Across different cultures, separated by both time and space, human beings shared similar image patterns, themes, and mysterious symbols. From ancient Greek myths, sacred symbols of Egypt, to folk tales scattered across the world, Jung realized something remarkable. There seemed to exist an invisible current flowing through human history, encoding shared experiences into spiritual images and symbols. No one teaches humans to dream of heroes, lurking shadows, or supreme deities. They simply appear, as if the mind carried them from the beginning. This led Jung to a bold conclusion. The human mind is not composed solely of personal memories beneath the personal unconscious. There exists a deeper layer, the collective unconscious, where archetypes, the primordial forms of thought and feeling, reside. Archetypes are not forgotten personal memories. They are primal images, psychological patterns shared by all humanity. They do not manifest as fixed forms, but as psychic energy fields, constantly expressing themselves through symbols, dreams, myths, and religious experiences. Jung understood that accessing archetypes is no simple task. They lie beyond the reach of ordinary rationality. They hide within the deep strata of the unconscious, revealing themselves only through mystical symbols, intense emotions, and transcendent moments that defy easy explanation. Thus, the journey to encounter the archetypes is a journey to learn a new language, the language of symbols, intuition, and feeling. This journey is not reserved for scholars or psychiatrists alone. It is the journey of every genuine human being, those who feel that something profound is missing from their lives, those who are restless before the great questions of being, meaning, and the unquenchable loneliness that no superficial solution can heal. By delving into the archetypes, Jung opened a new gateway for psychology. Instead of merely treating symptoms, he aimed to heal the soul at its roots. Recognizing the archetypes operating within our minds allows us to cease being slaves to unconscious patterns and to gradually become creators of our own lives. What Jung left us is not merely a theory. It is an invitation to step into the darkness, to rediscover the light that has long slumbered within us. An invitation not merely to live, but to live consciously, deeply, and truly as an awakened soul. Consciousness, personal unconscious, and collective unconscious, the three-tiered map of inner life, to understand how archetypes operate. Jung insisted that we must first grasp the full structure of the human psyche. He described the mind as a three-tiered entity, a complex yet lawfully organized map with three main realms: consciousness, personal unconscious, and collective unconscious. Consciousness, according to Jung, is the smallest yet most recognizable part. It consists of the thoughts, emotions, and actions we are directly aware of at any given moment, everything we are currently attending to, reflecting on, or feeling falls within the domain of consciousness. It is like the visible tip of an iceberg, radiant, but only a tiny portion of the whole. Beneath the surface of consciousness lies the personal unconscious. This is the repository of forgotten memories, repressed emotions, and past experiences that have been pushed out of conscious awareness, either because they were too painful or too trivial. Each of us carries a unique personal unconscious, woven from the tapestry of our individual life stories. It explains why childhood wounds, painful memories, and forgotten traumas can silently influence our behaviors, even when we believe we have left them behind. Yet deeper still, beyond personal narratives, lies the collective unconscious. This was Jung's greatest and most elusive discovery. The collective unconscious is not the product of any individual life. It is the shared inheritance of all humanity, containing archetypes, the primordial patterns that have existed since the dawn of human consciousness. The collective unconscious is like an underground river connecting all souls, transcending personal history, time, and space. The interaction among these three realms is constant and compensatory. When consciousness becomes too lopsided or rigid. Contents from the unconscious surge upward to restore balance, a strange dream, an unexpected emotional reaction, an inexplicable inner urge. All these may be messages from the deeper layers of the mind. Jung warned that if we live only on the surface of consciousness while ignoring the deeper realms, we impoverish ourselves, becoming distorted and vulnerable to the hidden currents of the inner life. Conversely, when we learn to listen, to respect, and to reconcile with the contents of the unconscious, we open the possibility for profound healing and the expansion of the self. Understanding the three-tiered map of the psyche is the first essential step on the journey of self-healing and awakening, for no one can truly govern their life while remaining blind to the uncharted territories within their own soul. Archetypes, the spiritual organs operating in the depths of the mind. If the physical body is structured by organs such as the heart, lungs, and brain, then, according to Carl Jung, the mind is likewise structured by spiritual organs, namely the archetypes. These archetypes do not exist in material form, nor can they be directly observed through the senses. They operate silently, hidden deep within the collective unconscious, shaping the ways we think, feel, and react to the world. Jung and his student, Eric Newman, compared archetypes to biological organs to better illuminate their nature, just as the heart begins to beat before we are even conscious of it. Archetypes have been active in the mind since early on, even before we can name our first emotions or impulses. Crucially, just as a healthy body depends on properly functioning organs, a healthy mind also relies on the proper functioning of its archetypes. When an archetype is distorted, denied, or erupts uncontrollably, the result can be profound psychological disturbances, existential crises, emotional disorders, and a deep sense of inner disorientation. Archetypes are not concrete contents like a memory or a clear image. They resemble primordial templates, abstract blueprints from which specific images, symbols, stories, and behaviors emerge. One does not need to be taught to fear the dark, to dream of a nurturing mother, or to be drawn to the image of a hero. These patterns have long resided in the mind, merely awaiting external stimuli to awaken them. However, archetypes do not operate mechanically or rigidly. They adapt and express themselves differently depending on culture, social context, and individual circumstances. One culture may honor the hero as a warrior, while another may revere silent self-sacrifice. Yet beneath all surface variations, the core archetypes continue to operate, like underground currents shaping the river's course. Because archetypes function within the unconscious, most of us are unaware of how they guide us. We love, we rage, we doubt, we yearn, yet rarely do we ask where these impulses arise from. Archetypes not only influence individual behavior, but also shape culture, religion, art, and the ways we construct meaning in life. Facing archetypes does not mean rejecting or destroying them. It means learning to recognize them, to work with them, and to integrate them into consciousness. When an archetype operates harmoniously with the rest of the psyche, it becomes a source of inner strength, igniting creativity, compassion, and spiritual growth. Understanding that we carry within us such spiritual organs marks the beginning of a profound healing journey. This journey is not about becoming a perfect person by external standards, but about becoming a whole being, where every inner current finds its rightful place and voice. Symbols, the mysterious language, whispered by the unconscious archetypes, dwell deep within the collective unconscious. But how can we recognize their presence in everyday life? Carl Jung proposed that archetypes do not manifest directly, but appear through an intermediary form, symbols. Symbols are the language of the unconscious. They are unlike the logical language of everyday consciousness. Where every concept is clearly defined, symbols are ambiguous, multi-layered, and invite exploration rather than explanation. A symbol does not stand still like a simple sign. It stirs the unknown depths of the soul. Jung made a clear distinction between signs and symbols. A sign merely represents a known object or concept. For example, a red light signaling to stop. A symbol, on the other hand, points to something deeper, beyond the grasp of mere rational understanding. A cross, a circle, a coiled serpent. These images are not mere objects. They are gateways leading to the deeper layers of the unconscious. When a symbol appears in dreams, in art, or in spiritual experience, it does not carry a single meaning. It opens vast fields of associations, awakening emotions and memories that sometimes cannot be articulated in words. Symbols are how archetypes send signals to consciousness, inviting us to engage in dialogue with the deepest parts of ourselves. However, understanding symbols cannot be forced through conventional analytical reasoning. Symbols must be approached with an attitude of listening, acceptance, and contemplation. Jung emphasized that when we hastily assign a fixed meaning to a symbol, we kill its vitality, for the essence of a symbol lies in its ceaseless movement between the known and the unknown, between the light of consciousness and the darkness of the unconscious. No two people perceive a symbol in exactly the same way. Although archetypes provide a shared structure, the specific form of the symbol each person encounters is shaped by their personal experiences, cultural background, and current psychological state. Thus, a symbol is both universal and profoundly individual. Learning the language of symbols is learning how to communicate with oneself at the deepest level. It is the way to decipher strange dreams, unnamed anxieties, and longings that defy rational explanation. It is also the path to recognizing the archetypal forces operating within our minds, sometimes as guides, sometimes as shadowy presences in need of recognition and integration. In a world saturated with noise and rational analysis, relearning the language of symbols is the most delicate form of rebellion. It is a declaration that our souls are vaster than the concepts imposed by society, and that hidden in each symbol, flickering within the mists of ambiguity, may lie messages our deepest self has long been sending, awaiting only the willingness to listen. The awakening journey, decoding symbols to reach the depths of the unconscious. Decoding symbols is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is a journey of inner awakening. Carl Jung emphasized that understanding symbols is not about rigid analysis. As we would with objective data, symbols do not belong to the world of fixed definitions, but to the world of vivid, ever-moving inner experiences. Each symbol is a doorway. When we listen to symbols with the full capacity of our intuition and emotion, not merely with reason, the doorway opens, leading us into new territories within ourselves. Symbols do not explain themselves definitively. They suggest, encircle, and point like stars in the night sky, hinting at an immeasurable expanse beyond our limited sight. Erich Neumann, Jung's student, described this process as one of convergence. Symbols do not exist in isolation, but gather into constellations, circling around a center of meaning too profound to name. Each symbol offers a different facet, a different perspective on the same unconscious reality. Only by gathering and contemplating these fragments can we begin to sketch the broader landscape of what stirs in our deepest psyche. Thus, decoding symbols requires an attitude of humility and patience. We do not impose meaning upon the symbol. We allow the symbol to lead us to deeper layers of understanding along this journey. Clarity may not arrive immediately. An image may recur across multiple dreams, imaginings, and moments of idle reverie, as if the unconscious patiently sketches the spiritual map meant uniquely for us. Properly interpreting symbols demands the fusion of clear rationality with deep intuition. Rationality prevents us from falling into blind superstition, while intuition opens the doors to a realm beyond ordinary language. When these two faculties work together, the contemplation of symbols does not merely reveal the archetypes operating within us. It grants access to deeper layers of meaning regarding life's purpose, personal mission, and the path of spiritual growth. Decoding symbols is not only about understanding the past or resolving present conflicts. It is an act of shaping the future, for what we leave unconscious continues to guide us from the shadows. Conversely, each symbol brought into awareness, each archetype integrated into consciousness, releases creative energy, fosters healing, and deepens our sense of self. In a world growing ever noisier, more rushed, and more superficial, returning to decode the soul's symbols is an act of profound courage. Is the choice to live not merely on the surface, but to live from the full depth we have been gifted. The depth that each symbol, silently and patiently, has always been pointing us toward. In every dream, every emotion, every moment we are truly present with ourselves. The self, the central archetype, and the journey of healing the psyche among the rich treasure trove of archetypes that Carl Jung explored. The self stands as the central archetype, the axis around which the entire psychological life revolves. The self is not the small ego, not the social identity, or the roles we assume outwardly. The self is the image of wholeness, the symbol of the unification of all opposing forces within the soul. The self appears in the mind through ancient, powerful, and vibrant symbols. One of the most common symbols is the mandala, a circle with a center, sometimes including a square or symmetrical intersections. The mandala is not merely a work of art, but a way in which the unconscious expresses the longing for balance, inner order, and the primordial harmony that the human soul eternally seeks. Besides the mandala, the self manifests through other images: the tree of life, the cosmic crossroads, the elixir of life, the axis mundi connecting heaven and earth. Despite their differing forms, all these symbols point to the same reality, the vital center of being, the place where all fractures are healed, where opposites are reconciled, where human beings rediscover their profound wholeness. Religion, according to Jung, is a rich reservoir of symbols for the self-divine figures. Myths of death and rebirth and heroic journeys are humanity's unconscious attempts to depict and connect with the self. However, Jung emphasized that he did not seek to reduce religious experience to a product of psychology. For him, the experience of the self, like the experience of the divine, touches layers far beyond the scope of rational explanation. Connecting with the self is not an abstract theory. It is a life-or-death personal journey in Jungian depth psychology. This journey is called individuation, the process by which an individual gradually transcends external patterns, confronts and integrates the rejected parts of the self, and becomes a whole human being. Along this path, healing is not merely about making wounds disappear. True healing, in the Jungian sense, is the act of unifying everything that has been separated and fragmented within the soul. It is the acceptance of both light and darkness within oneself, strength and vulnerability, reason and emotion. It is the relinquishment of the illusion of perfection to step into profound wholeness. The self does not promise comfort. The self demands courage, radical honesty, and the letting go of comforting illusions. Yet, it is only through connecting with the self that one experiences the true sense of being oneself, no longer defined by society, no longer driven by roles, no longer trapped in the repetitive cycles of unconscious conflict. When one touches the self, the need to seek validation from outside dissolves one, becomes the center of their own being, whole unto themselves, and from there can step into the world with an authentic, powerful, and compassionate presence, not to compensate for a void, but to share from the abundance of a soul that has become full. The origin of archetypes, evolutionary inheritance or transcendent reality beyond comprehension. If archetypes exist as foundational psychological structures, an inevitable question arises. Where do they come from? How did these spiritual templates form and become the shared legacy of humanity? Throughout his career, Carl Jung pondered deeply over this question. He proposed two parallel explanations, each opening up different philosophical depths, and neither of which can be fully proven or disproven. On one hand, Jung suggested that archetypes could be understood as the product of the psychological evolution of humanity over millions of years. The fundamental experiences of life survival, love, struggle, death, imprinted themselves deeply into the mental structure of our ancestors. And these imprints have been passed down to us just as our bodies inherit genetic blueprints for physical form and function. So too our minds inherit spiritual blueprints. These are the archetypes. From this perspective, archetypes are like the biological heritage of the soul. They are not specific memories but performed patterns ready to organize life experiences into certain recurring forms. A child does not need to be taught to fear the dark or to seek comfort in the image of a nurturing mother. These responses arise naturally, as part of the collective legacy encoded in the unconscious. However, Jung also recognized that the evolutionary explanation could not fully capture the profound nature of archetypes. There is something about these primordial forms that transcends simple biological inheritance. They carry an eternal beauty, a mystical vitality, and a multi-layered richness that evolutionary theory alone cannot fully grasp. Thus, Jung was also sympathetic to another interpretation, that archetypes exist as transcendent forms. Similar to the immutable ideas in Plato's philosophy. In this view, archetypes are not merely the products of evolutionary history, but timeless spiritual realities existing beyond time, space, and individuality. They are not simply molds created by evolutionary necessity, but fundamental elements of human nature itself. Jung acknowledged that the ultimate origin of archetypes is a metaphysical question, one that lies beyond the full capacity of human understanding, whether they stem from evolutionary inheritance or from a transcendent, eternal reality. What matters most is that archetypes exist, operate, and profoundly influence the inner life of every individual. Recognizing the presence of archetypes is therefore not just an academic insight. It is the first step toward a deeper understanding of oneself, a movement away from blindness toward the landscape of the soul. It is also a humble acceptance that within us lie depths that reason cannot govern, currents we can only feel, accompany, and honor. By opening ourselves to the mystery of the archetypes, we not only delve into the shared legacy of humanity, but also touch the deepest source of our own being, where the visible and the invisible meet, where personal journeys and the fate of humanity dance together in an endless cosmic rhythm. The silent mission, illuminating darkness, awakening inner light. Carl Jung believed that the ultimate purpose of human life is not to flee from darkness, nor to seek a state of permanent safety. The true, profound, and irreplaceable purpose is to expand the light of consciousness into the uncharted territories within the self. He wrote, "The task of man is to become conscious of the contents that press upward from the unconscious. This means that every moment we confront strange dream images, unexpected reactions, or deep emotions, we stand at the threshold of a sacred mission, the mission to illuminate the darkness." Illuminating darkness does not mean eradicating it. Darkness, in Jungian psychology, is not the absolute evil that must be destroyed. but the unknown, the rejected, the unrealized potential within us. Light does not triumph over darkness by annihilating it, but by shining upon it, making it visible, understandable, and integrated into the totality of being. This process is not easy. It demands courage to face aspects of ourselves we would rather deny: wounds, anger, fear, weakness, chaos. It demands humility to accept that we are not all-powerful, and that within our limits and contradictions lies the true path to growth. Jung warned that if we avoid facing our inner darkness, the unconscious contents will continue to operate invisibly, shaping our behavior, emotions, and even our destiny without our awareness. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate, he wrote. Thus, illuminating the darkness is not merely a personal act. It is a profound transformation, a liberation for ourselves and for others. A soul that has become aware of its own darkness no longer needs to blame the world, no longer needs to project fear and anger onto others. That soul becomes a silent but powerful center of light, illuminating even the coldest corners of existence. This mission, though silent, is the noblest through the expansion of consciousness. Humans truly participate in the transformation of the world, not through noisy external revolutions, but through the deep revolution within the heart. In an era where it is all too easy to blame circumstances, others, or fate, taking responsibility for the awakening of one's inner life is an act of meaningful rebellion. It is the only way to be truly free. It is the only way life ceases to be a chain of unconscious reactions and becomes a symphony created by conscious awareness, love, and uncompromising courage. Illuminating the darkness, this is not merely a task for ourselves alone. It is a gift we offer to ourselves and to the entire world. Inner strength. When awakening becomes the source of freedom and meaning, Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." In this statement, he pointed out a fundamental truth. True freedom does not come from denying the darker parts within us, but from facing, understanding, and integrating them into consciousness. Inner awakening is not a miraculous moment of sudden illumination. It is a difficult process, step by step expanding the boundaries of the self, each time confronting fears, each time courageously facing parts of the self that we once wished to forget. But through this very process, inner strength gradually forms a kind of strength, no longer dependent on external circumstances, no longer shaken by the vicissitudes of life. When a person truly begins the journey of awakening, they no longer seek validation from the world. They stop expecting success, love, or recognition to fill the deep void within. They understand that only by connecting with the deepest layer of being, with the self, can they find a true sense of wholeness and peace. This inner strength does not manifest through ostentation. It is silent, persistent, and steadfast. It is the ability to stand firm amidst chaos without losing direction. It is the ability to love without attachment. It is the ability to endure loneliness without losing faith in one's own intrinsic value. An awakened person knows that freedom does not lie in controlling the world, but in the ability to control oneself. Freedom does not mean the absence of pain, but no longer being dominated by pain. Thus, meaning in life is no longer sought from outside, but created from within, from the very process of the soul's maturation. Jung believed that the expansion of consciousness not only enriches personal life, but is a silent and essential contribution to the overall evolution of humanity. Every individual who finds light in their own darkness becomes a small torch lighting the path for others. In a world swept away by hurried rhythms, short-term goals, and invisible fears, returning inward, confronting darkness. And awakening the inner light is more urgent than ever. It is not merely a path to personal liberation, but the only way to bring about a genuine, deep, and enduring sense of meaning in life. When awakening becomes the foundation of every action, one no longer remains a victim of circumstance. They become the creator of their own life, walking through the world not with illusions of omnipotence, but with a profound understanding that freedom, strength, and meaning are not things to be sought externally, but realities to be kindled from within the immortal core of one's being. The journey of exploring the world of archetypes is not merely an adventure in psychological theory. It is an invitation to return to the primal essence of the self, where ancient patterns still quietly operate, where light and darkness are no longer opposites, but two converging currents, completing the wholeness of the soul. Understanding archetypes is not about controlling them, but about living with them in a state of awareness, to cease being blindly driven by invisible forces, and instead become the conscious creator of one's life. Through deep recognition, courageous confrontation, and patient healing, in every dream, every fear, every strange image that drifts through our mind, the archetypes whisper to us, reminding us that life is deeper than what the eyes can see, and that the journey toward true meaning, freedom, and inner light does not begin in the external world, but from within the deepest layers of the soul. This is not merely the work of a single lifetime, it is the work of humanity itself, and it begins right here, right now, in every moment we dare to listen to the silent call of our true being.